The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, I have another spoiler from the upcoming Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion for the Arkham Horror LCG. The first of two upcoming big box releases, the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion will feature 5 new investigators and about 250 cards to expand your deck building options. And I am thrilled to share one of those cards with you today. In fact, today's spoiler is an upgrade for a card that many players consider to be among the worst in the game. Now I bet that got your attention. A big thank you to FFG for providing the spoilers to the content creators in the Arkham Horror LCG community. The support is greatly appreciated. Speaking of support, if you enjoyed this type of content, let FFG know by remembering to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out immensely. Before I get started, I'd like to thank the patrons of this channel for their tremendous support. The Arkham Horror LCG community is amazing, and these people have gone above and beyond to bring you the news, reviews, and playthroughs that I do on this channel. If you'd like to support the channel and see your name on this list, head over to patreon.com, sign up for a tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. So which card is among the worst in the game? Let's find out. That card is none other than Fire Extinguisher from the Miskatonic Museum Mythos pack. You've probably never played with Fire Extinguisher, or it's been so long that you don't remember what it does, so let's review it quickly. It's a 2-cost survivor asset that costs 1 experience point. It has an agility skill icon and the item, tool, and melee traits. It has 2 action triggered abilities. The first gives you +1 combat skill value for an attack. The second gives you +3 agility for an evade action, and if you are successful, you evade each other enemy engaged with you. However, regardless of success or failure, you must exile Fire Extinguisher. Fire Extinguisher takes up a hand slot. Fire Extinguisher has seen very little play since it was released almost 4 years ago. In fact, if you search Arkham DB for decks that use Fire Extinguisher, most of them are theme decks built by members of the Arkham Horror LCG community in support of a fundraiser to combat the wildfires that devastated parts of Australia a year or so ago. There are several reasons why Fire Extinguisher is considered binder fodder by the community. A fight action with a +1 combat skill bonus for 1 XP is pretty awful compared with Fire Axe or Meat Cleaver, both of which are level 0 cards, or the vastly superior Flare, which was released in the same Mythos pack. An evade action with a +3 agility skill bonus is better, especially on higher levels of difficulty that require larger skill bonuses or testless actions to counter the variance in the Chaos Bag. However, unlike events or skills that improve your odds of evading enemies, Fire Extinguisher requires an action to play and then another action to trigger it, and after you trigger it, you must exile the Fire Extinguisher. That is, you remove it from the game and return it to your collection. Removing Fire Extinguisher from the game prevents survivors like William York from using their recursion tricks to abuse it, which isn't ideal. God forbid you draw an auto-fail during the evade action and you have nothing to show for your investment of 1 experience point and 2 resources. If you exile Fire Extinguisher and want to include it in your deck in a future scenario, you must purchase it again with experience points, which isn't great when many players argue that it's not worth 1 experience point to begin with. Deja Vu, a survivor permanent from the Stella Clark starter deck, can reduce the experience point cost by 1, but that card costs 5 experience points, so you need to be playing a lot of cards with the exile keyword to get your money's worth. A lousy weapon with a one-shot ability that has the potential to burn through your hard-earned experience points, Fire Extinguisher is all smoke and no sizzle. That brings us to today's spoiler from the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion, Fire Extinguisher 3. Fire Extinguisher 3 is a 2-cost survivor asset that costs 3 experience points. It has 2 agility skill icons and the item, tool, and melee traits. It has 2 action triggered abilities. The first gives you +1 combat skill value and +1 damage for an attack. The second lets you discard Fire Extinguisher 3 to automatically evade all enemies engaged with you. You may exile Fire Extinguisher 3 instead of discarding it to discard each non-elite evaded by this effect, and Fire Extinguisher takes up a hand slot. Fire Extinguisher 3 improves upon its level 1 counterpart, but a lot of those improvements remind me of putting lipstick on a pig. Sure, the extra agility skill icon is nice, but players have come to expect more skill icons on high-level cards. The addition of +1 damage is welcome, but Fire Extinguisher is still a pretty poor weapon compared to the others available in the Survivor card pool, especially if you're going to spend some XP to buy one. If you're spending 3 experience points to purchase Fire Extinguisher, then it's for the second ability. Discarding Fire Extinguisher to automatically evade all enemies engaged with you is a good effect, especially if you're playing on hard or expert difficulty. Cards with powerful effects that don't require skill tests are a big plus on those difficulty levels. Discarding the Fire Extinguisher rather than exiling it means William York can play it from his discard pile with his response after defeating an enemy. Other survivors can use recursion tricks such as either level of scavenging or resourceful to abuse it. I wish Fire Extinguisher 3 let you automatically evade all enemies at your location rather than just the enemies engaged with you. That might have been a little too good in multiplayer, but you are paying 3 XP for Fire Extinguisher, which is at the top end of the XP curve for survivors. Fire Extinguisher 3 gives you the option to exile it to discard each non-elite enemy evaded by its effect, but I can't think of many situations in which I would do that. It might be worthwhile if there are a lot of non-elite enemies with the Hunter keyword, or you run into a swarm or swarms while playing the Dream Eater cycle. Automatically evading a swarm of enemies and then discarding them is a lot more efficient than trying to kill them one by one. But the idea of repurchasing Fire Extinguisher 3, even with a discount from Deja Vu, is very unappealing. That's going to do it for my look at Fire Extinguisher 3. Is it an improvement on Fire Extinguisher 1? Sure, but Fire Extinguisher 1 is among the worst cards in the game, so the bar wasn't very high to begin with. Many players argue that Fire Extinguisher 1 isn't worth 1 XP and 2 resources, and Fire Extinguisher 3 still feels like it costs too many experience points for what you get. An extra agility skill icon and a fight action with +1 combat skill value and +1 damage are certainly not worth 3 XP, which means the second ability has a lot, and I mean a lot, of heavy lifting to do to make Fire Extinguisher 3 worth the investment. It's been some time since I played William York, but he seems to be the most likely candidate to play Fire Extinguisher 3 since he can recycle it fairly easily using his response. Clearing the board of enemies is all well and good, but sometimes even the most well-armed investigator needs to pull off a cheeky evade, and Fire Extinguisher 3 gives William York that option. Other survivors will need to run cards like Resourceful and/or either level of Scavenging if they want to get the most out of Fire Extinguisher 3, but that's not a huge stretch for most decks. I guess it won't be long before the Edge of the Earth Investigator expansion is released, and we will find out whether Fire Extinguisher 3 finds a home in Survivor decks, or it joins its counterpart in the binder. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromlang@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromlang. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.